Natural selection can only select, thus its name. It cannot create anything new. In order to select for beneficial mutations, the mutations themselves must first exist. However, no such mutations exist.
You're wrong.
For example, kinfolk in the village of Lemun Salgarda in northern Italy have a mutation which gives them higher tolerance to HDL serum cholesterol. Consequently, this family has no history of heart attacks despite their high-risk dietary habits. This mutation was traced to a single common ancestor living in the 1700s, but has now spread to dozens of descendants. Genetic samples from this family are now being tested for potential treatment for patients of heart disease.
Unfortunately, the same mutations that were beneficial to that life form, if this process did indeed exist.
I believe in natural selection. I believe in mutation. I believe in adaptation.
If this process did indeed exist.
I believe in natural selection.
What? I believe in mutation.
Evolutionists don't upset me. You've never seen me just blow my lid off at an evolutionist. Because their theory doesn't threaten me.
That's like you lost your mind.
If this process did indeed exist, would still be going on today in the opposite direction. If no more additional beneficial mutations could occur, then that leaves only detrimental or bad mutations to occur.
Such as albinism, Mongolism, dwarfism, or diseases such as cancer.
If you can't think for yourself, no wonder you believe in a God. I have yet to find an example of a moral standard of this character in your holy book that I find morally correct. The book of the law tells you exactly who you can enslave, how much it costs to sell them, how to identify them by holding their ear up to the door and driving all through it. Have you not read that part of the Bible?
The commandment about...
Hang on. Have you not read that part of the Bible?
What?
Have you not read the story of Jephthah, who offered to sacrifice the first thing that comes out of his house to God if God would let him win this battle? God supposedly does let him win the battle, knowing in advance that it would be his daughter. Therefore, God has endorsed human sacrifice. Did you not read that part of the Bible? Your God's an ass.
You don't have a leg to stand on. Because my shoe formed by chance. Here's another point that I've never made. I'm so astronomically high that it's kind of... you can't even say it. Let me give you an example. I don't claim to be a good person, no more than anyone else, but I do claim to know the truth.
I was a Christian for 25 years. It's not the good book. There's nothing good about it. All it does is poison minds. All it does is make you sacrifice your humanity, the only thing that you have that is of any value, in order to sit around in deference to your God. And it's a shame that so many people are so sucked into this religious thing that even when you lead them down the path step by step, as soon as they get to the point where they'd have to admit that, yes, when I think about it, that is an immoral thing, they instead have to add 20 qualifiers and buts and maybes to their answer, just like you did. Your God isn't real. He's not moral. The Bible isn't moral. Islam isn't moral. None of these religious systems, anything that deteriorates the value of human beings, anything that hangs on to Bronze Age ideals about genocide and slavery and murder and deference to higher powers, none of those things are moral. We've graduated beyond that, and I'm sorry that we've had to drag religions kicking and screaming in the 21st century, but some of you got to let this stuff go.
Do you know what a fool is? A fool is not a stupid person. A stupid person, when they do stupid things, you can only say, like Forrest Gump said, stupid is as stupid does. You can't hold them accountable for that because they don't know better. A fool is someone who knows what is good and knows what is right and doesn't believe it.
I believe in natural selection. I believe in mutation. I believe in adaptation. I just don't think they can do what you say they do, and I don't think they did what you say they did.
Your position here is so weak, and I can see so clearly how to refute you, and I think a lot of the audience watching this can see it too.
Why is it that random mutation always seems to make really intelligent decisions?
Such as albinism, Mongolism, dwarfism, or diseases such as cancer.
And I just hope one day you and I can be friends, man. Seriously, I like you a good deal, and I'm sorry that this has become so hostile.
You must be seen to be their friend. After all, it is necessary to get behind someone before you can stab them in the back.
If you ask me, I don't think the world shows any evidence of evolution.
Merely type observed instances of speciation into Google and you get a web page with about 30 cases of speciation documented in about 100 articles in the peer-reviewed scientific literature.
Taxonomy is based as much on an organism's physiognomy, reproduction, and development as it is on the form itself. For this reason, the animal kingdom is then divided between the sponges and everything else more advanced than that, including bilateria. These are triploblast animals which at some stage of development are bilaterally symmetrical. One subset of that is collimata, bilaterally symmetrical animals with a tubular internal digestive cavity. One of its subsequent subdivisions is deuterostomia, collimates in which the early development of the digestive tract begins with the blastopore opening the anal orifice before the one for the mouth. This is a strange thing to have in common with every other higher life form, isn't it? If they were all specially created, one might think that any one of them could develop by some other means or in some other order. Maybe snails would develop like mammals and fish develop like squids, something like that. Something that wouldn't only indicate an inherited trait consistent with both the genetics and morphology of common ancestry. But instead, every vertebrate has red blood while chelicerates and mollusks all have blue blood, with no exceptions on either side. Everything we see in nature consistently adheres to everything we would expect of a chain of inherited variations carried down through flowering lines of descent, just as it is in this case too. Starfish, sea urchins, acorn worms, and every single thing that ever had a spinal cord all developed the opening for the anus first. Isn't that odd? The common ancestry model obviously explains this fact, but to date, no would-be critic of evolution has ever been able to offer any alternative explanation for this or any of the other trends we see in taxonomy.
What Jesus or your God has done is said that there are things that your children can do, not loving you being the primary one, which makes them deserve to be locked up in the basement and tortured forever.
Okay, Matt.
Is there anything that your kids could ever do if you do anything remotely like that, even for a short time? I think that anybody who advocates slavery, endorses slavery, is morally inferior. I think that anybody who advocates genocide and slaughter is morally inferior. I think that hang on. I think that anybody who advocates infinite punishment or infinite reward for finite crimes and deeds is morally inferior.
You and I deserve infinite punishment.
I think that anybody who is supposedly omniscient and omnipotent and omnibenevolent, who creates a system knowing that people are going to not be able to live up to his standards, spends an eternity punishing them, or at least many thousands of years punishing them, trying to correct his mistakes over and over again. He creates Adam and Eve, they fail, he banishes them out of the garden, then there's the Tower of Babel, then there's the flood, and then there's all the, well actually there's the flood and then the Tower of Babel, sorry I got that backwards. It's failure after failure after failure after failure after failure, and then finally it culminates in the only loophole that the creator of all the laws of the universe can come up with. Why didn't he just forgive everybody or change the laws? But instead he has to create a loophole where he comes down bodily and sacrifices himself to act as a loophole for a rule that he created. It's absurd. It is laughably absurd, and it's immoral.
No, you're not looking. There are two entities. You have a fallen angel named Lucifer.
And he's more powerful?
What's that?
He's more powerful?
No, he's
Then
not.
why doesn't God get rid of him?
Because God is not God's character.
Oh.
It's not God's character.
Okay, then we have yet another moral thing where I'm superior. Because we have another area where I'm morally superior. Because if I created a bunch of things and I wanted and I loved and cared about these people, but something else that I created was screwing up their lives, I'd get rid of it. That's in my character. That's morally correct. Your God's an ass.
Well, that about wraps it up for God. QED.